Друзья, добрый день. Я хотел в первую очередь поинтересоваться, слышно ли меня хорошо. Напишите, пожалуйста, в чат, если все в порядке, и мы начнем наш вебинар. Отлично, супер. Добрый день, доброе утро или даже добрый вечер всем нашим зрителям. Рада приветствовать на нашем вебинаре, который сегодня посвящен образованию в Австралии. И очень радостно видеть столько людей и присутствующих на нашем диалоге сегодня. И, естественно, наш диалог сегодня будет посвящен именно образованию в Австралии. Также мы обсудим вопросы, которые касаются вообще жизни студенческой, университетской жизни, чем отличаются разные города и, конечно же, чем отличаются университеты. Сегодня у нас в гостях представители университетов из таких городов, как Перт и Брисбен. Это одни из самых больших городов в Австралии, куда ежегодно приезжают тысячи студентов на обучение. И с нами сегодня Марк Ремес из университета Edith и Cowan и Дэниел Мэттер из университета технологического Квинсленда. Кажется, я вижу, что кто-то говорит, что меня не видно, а так сейчас, я думаю, что должно быть видно. Да, отлично. Значит, можно продолжать. Да, спасибо большое за фидбэк. В первую очередь хотел представиться. Меня зовут Виталий Степаненко. Я работаю в компании Students International, и наша компания является официальным представителем многих университетов и институтов за рубежом, включая австралийских. И учитывая, что мы занимаемся образованием за рубежом, мы постоянно помогаем студентам в первую очередь с тем, чтобы определиться с различными направлениями, которые есть за рубежом и доступны нашим студентам. Мы рассказываем полностью о критериях поступления в университеты, так как мы ежедневно общаемся с приемными комиссиями вузов по тем или иным вопросам, которые касаются непосредственно зачисления наших студентов на программы. И помимо того, что мы помогаем с зачислениями, очень хорошо знаем вообще критерии отбора студентов при поступлении, мы также неплохо ориентируемся в возможных стипендиальных программах, которые доступны нашим студентам, если они едут на учебу. И также занимаемся курированием, визовой поддержкой, потому что это тоже очень важный вопрос, который очень часто на повестке дня после того, как студенты получают зачисление. В принципе, наша главная цель – это сделать так, чтобы все студенты, которые планируют поехать на учебу в Австралию или вообще в любую другую страну, имели всю информацию для того, чтобы принять правильное решение. Решение, которое подходит именно им. Не какое-то шаблонное решение, которое, в принципе, сделано под какую-то линейку, а именно то решение, которое основано на желании вашем и, естественно, решение, которое поможет вам добиться вашей цели в дальнейшем профессиональном развитии. И помимо того, что мы помогаем со всем, что касается зачисления, визовой поддержки и так далее, мы также помогаем с подготовкой к экзаменам по английскому языку, а именно экзамену IELTS. И если кто-то не знает, что это за экзамен, это обычно один из немногих экзаменов, которые нужно сдавать для того, чтобы поступить в университеты, как австралийские, так и любые другие зарубежные, где учеба происходит на английском языке. Да, мы помогаем с подготовкой к этому экзамену, и у нас оперирует IELTS-школа, как раз на слайде есть контактные данные этой школы. Ну и, конечно, если вы вдруг решитесь сдать экзамен, то мы также его организовываем, причем не только в больших городах России, а ежегодно мы проводим экзамен в более чем 45 городах России и Украины, поэтому вы всегда можете воспользоваться такой возможностью, записаться и сдать этот экзамен, который поможет в дальнейшем вам с поступлением за рубеж. Ну и перейдем из короткого предисловия к нашей основной теме. А тема нашего разговора сегодня как раз будет дискуссия между двумя университетами, где мы проведем такой анализ, чем могут быть привлекательны два разных вуза австралийских, которые находятся в разных штатах, на разных побережьях Австралии, и чем может быть интересен Перт, включая университет Edith и Cowan, или же Брисбен, который включает университет Квинслендский технологический. Поэтому прошу приветствовать моих коллег, друзей, Дэниела, Марка. Мы сейчас начнем разговор. Естественно, разговор будет на английском. Несколько правил перед тем, как мы начнем. Вся дискуссия будет происходить на английском языке, но если вам вдруг что-то очень интересное и непонятно, вы всегда можете в чате написать свой вопрос, и в процессе я буду стараться мониторить эти вопросы для того, чтобы понять, стоит ли какую-то информацию транслировать на русский язык в виде короткого обзора о том, что мы сейчас проговорили. Также вы можете задавать свои вопросы в специальной секции вопросов и ответов или Q&A, и когда мы закончим наш разговор, мы вернемся к нескольким вопросам, которые будут в Q&A и обязательно на них ответим. В общей сложности у нас на нашу дискуссию мы отвели где-то примерно 40 минут и где-то в районе 20-25 минут для того, чтобы еще дополнительно ответить на ваши вопросы. Ну, сейчас приступаем к нашей презентации. Daniel, Marco, it's great to have you with us. You can switch on your microphones and cameras, and we can start rolling. Okay, I can see you well. Can you say something? So.
Yeah, hi everyone. Всем привет, добро пожаловать. Меня зовут Марко.
That's perfect Russian language skills, Marco.
Getting rusty, but yeah.
That's
trying.
awesome. Daniel, good to have you with us as well.
Yeah, good evening and good morning to everyone. I hope you're all well.
Yep, we're all good and we're all ready to go. Are you guys ready to for our discussion?
Absolutely.
That's
Definitely.
perfect. Do you guys have a short video that you can show our students that we can start with about your universities and, well, cities? I will stop sharing my screen so you can possibly share yours, and we'll start with a short video. So, Marco, would you like to start with yours?
Yeah, sure.
That sounds great. Yep. So I'll stop sharing my screen. Just make sure that you tick off the share sound and
yeah.
You know the drill.
yeah. So everyone, what I'll do, I've put together a little video. It's not like an official ECU video, so yeah, probably breaking some copyrights of the university here. But I just thought that for this group, I just tailored a little short video that basically has some highlights of ECU. So we'll kind of start with a bit of a flight from Russia into ECU, and then we'll see the facilities, and it will only take like 2.5 minutes. So let's do it. All right, share sound. Okay, it should be coming right now. Can you see that?
I can see the presentation window that you have. Okay.
Can you see it now?
Yep.
Okay. All right. I'm going to play the video now. So here we go. If I can make it work. There we go.
All right. I always enjoy the pictures of Australian Ocean. Keeps
and it's
me
not
calm.
far from here. Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome. So
That's
Daniel,
where I was this morning.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Daniel, would you like to show your video now?
Yes, I will attempt to do that. Okay. Stop share. Yes. How's it working?
I can see the picture. Let's see. Yeah, the sound is going as well.
sunny weather, how's your 5 degrees? Put on your best sweater and roll up the sleeves. Step out in the wire, trying to get a little higher. Oh, oh, oh. Step out in the wire, trying to get a little higher. Oh, oh, oh. Step out in the wire, trying to get a little higher. Oh, oh, oh. Step out in the wire, trying to get a little higher. Oh, oh, oh. Beam of spits as we could roll around. Knew it was threads from the lost and found. Mysterious man in you, what kind of band? 6 for the strip this time. Cooks concoct just across the street, chopping product like they're chopping meat. The room below where the wild things go, always from neon snow.
That's perfect. That's perfect. So I think students are having loads of fun at QUT as well.
We certainly hope so.
That's awesome. So let's begin. So we've done the short introduction of your universities, guys. But if you could say in few words where your universities are located and what unique facilities your universities are known for. Marco, what can you say about ECU?
Yeah, well, first of all, ECU is located in Perth, so we are on the west coast of Australia. Some people say that Perth is kind of like a gateway to Australia, at least coming from the Europe way. There's a direct flight to London, for example, the only Australian city that is connected to Europe. But it's quite far from the east coast. So, for example, where Daniel's university is, it would be, what is it to Brisbane? 4.5 hours. So that just goes to show, or 5 hours even. So that just goes to show how large Australia is. So in the West Coast, what ECU is famous for? ECU is quite a young university. So today, or this year rather, is our 30th anniversary. So we were established as a university in 1991. Because we are a young university, I think it also shows in our facilities. So we've got extremely modern facilities, very sort of industry-linked learning, and that's a big difference that many students, and it's the same whether you go to ECU, QUT, or pretty much to any Australian university. The hands-on experience that you get it's very, very different to so many other parts of the world, and that would obviously be our strength as well. What we are very proud of at ECU is that we have had 5 stars for teaching quality for 14 years in a row in the Good Universities Guide. So we really put a lot of focus in teaching quality and the student experience and the support that the students get. So students are pretty happy at ECU, and that's something that we take a lot of pride in.
That's amazing. And I guess having the best student experience is one of the key points of studying in Australia for our students. And you don't just travel to another country to get a degree, you travel for the whole experience. And yeah, that's great that you guys have that. So Daniel, what can you say about QUT?
Sure. So QUT is based in Brisbane, which is the capital of Queensland. So we're roughly an hour north of Sydney flying, about 1.5 hours north of Melbourne. And as Marco mentioned, 5 hours from the western coast. So it is, we are quite a sizable country. But what it does actually provide is, I guess, students the opportunity to explore, I guess, a country of the size of Australia in their time whilst they're here. So our campus is a city-based campus. So we are centrally located in Brisbane. We are right on the border of the Brisbane River. We're also adjacent to our botanical gardens. So As soon as you step out of your lecture theatre, you either have a river on one side or a large public garden on the other side, which makes it super convenient, especially if you're wanting to live close by. We have the Central Business District with many of our accommodation options, as well as our large entertainment precinct, which is on the south side of the river from where we actually sit. And as Marco mentioned, many of the Australian universities are well known for their technology. QUT has, I guess, two pieces of particularly interesting technology that we're very proud of. The first of which is our Cube project, which is effectively the largest digital 2-story and 48 multi-touch screen interactive learning display. So it's effectively a giant computer. So it's super popular with our high school and primary school students because it's basically interactive. They can walk up and touch the screen any point in time. But one of the great things is that it's actually used for is displaying student projects. So all of the student projects that are happening in our science and engineering space at some point are all displayed on that particular piece of technology. So it's a great way for students to actually get some recognition of what they're actually doing. And then on in our education precinct, we also have one of the largest pieces of digital technology there, which is a sphere. I've got a couple of pieces of information that I'll share with you afterwards to send out to the student group. But effectively, the sphere itself is able to provide students with insights into what's actually happening in the education world. So at the moment, we've just launched our newest piece of Indigenous artwork, and that's been constantly displayed on our sphere. One of the other things it also does is actually predicts the weather in Queensland, which is always a bit of a hit and miss thing, but it's an exciting piece of technology that can be utilised in many, many different ways.
That sounds pretty amazing. And you mentioned that you're located right close to the gardens, which makes your campus very green, I would assume.
Absolutely, it's having worked at 3 different universities, it's probably one of the more greener campuses I've ever been able to see. Considering it's right smack bang in the middle of a city, it's it's a very odd location, but a very, very pristine and very pretty one at the same time.
That's awesome. And saying that, our students are quite interested whenever they choose the university overseas where they want to study. They look into general rankings of the university. But now what we found is that it's not always relevant for them whenever they just look at the general rankings. So we always try to have them look into specific courses or specific subjects that they consider studying at the specific universities. So what can you say about your general rankings and possibly 3 specific subjects that students should consider studying? Now, Daniel, what do you think QUT can offer to our students?
So general rankings, QUT is ranked in the top 200 in the Times Higher Ed 2021 ranking, and we're in the top we're the top Australian university under 50 in the 2020 rankings. Overall in the QS World ranking, we rank 217, so slightly lower, but we do have some really, really strong subject rankings in the QS area. We are ranked number 1 in Australia for media and communications. So if students have a particular interest in that, that would certainly be one of our top subject areas that we would be very interested in. One of the other ones is our information technology or IT discipline. And of course, our business school is always heavily featured as one of very, very few Triple Crown accredited business schools in anywhere in the world. So we're always very conscious of that and the ability that it does actually provide students who study with us to know that they're getting a top quality education, but B, that education is going to be recognised around the world because of that accreditation.
That's perfect. And it's good that you mentioned IT because I'm looking through the chat and well, we've got one of our listeners, Azim, and he's actually interested in learning programming. So I would assume that QUT would be a good university to consider if he's planning to learn programming. That's perfect. Marco, what can you say about ECU? Can you learn programming in there as well?
Programming wouldn't be, if I was going for programming, I would choose QUT for that, but ECU would be a really good choice for cybersecurity. So in terms of the study areas, cyber is definitely something that is extremely popular right now. There's a massive global demand for cybersecurity professionals. People often think it's cybersecurity, it's like a government issue, but it's actually a household issue as well. It's you know, it's on your mobile phone, so it's a huge. We are all like right now. There could be cybercrime happening to any of us without us knowing. So the demand is massive globally, and we have the Australian Cybersecurity Research Centre. So we've been funded by the Australian government for that. And we really are one of the leading universities in the world when it comes to cybersecurity research and the graduate outcomes, and the facilities, you know, as you would have seen in a couple of the pictures, are absolutely fantastic. So that's one really interesting study area at ECU. In terms of rankings, we rank in top 100 of the young universities in the world, and then we do really well also in. I kind of compare those rankings to like TripAdvisor. I don't know if TripAdvisor is popular in Russia, but when you go to like restaurants or hotels, you, especially hotels, you know, you would look at what other people think of those hotels, and there's a thing in Australia called QUILT, Quality Indicators of Learning and Teaching, and ECU does really well in the QUILT rankings and ratings, which is actually student-based feedback. So we've been ranked, for example, number 2 Australian public university for teaching quality in that one as well. So something that we are very proud of as well. In terms of some other study areas, business is really popular, and again, very sort of industry linked, very hands-on as well, and engineering. So the engineering facilities are ultra modern, and the buildings were just updated a couple of years ago as well.
That's great. Well, judging from your facilities and how your campuses look, I could say that you definitely tend to grow really good engineers in your universities. That's for sure. And speaking about QUILT and quality of education, do you think that general rankings actually affect the employability of students, or is this something that the students should also focus on whenever they look for a university degree overseas, specifically in Australia? Marco, sorry.
Yeah. That's a really good question. I mean, once you graduate from the university, I mean, ultimately, it's not the university where you have studied that builds your CV. It's you. So really, like, university gives you the foundation. Obviously, if you come from a good quality university, you know, let's say that someone studied at Cambridge, yes, it does get noticed on your resume, but I don't think employers very often, they would go and actually check, okay, what is the university like where you've studied? You know, they look at your experience, and they obviously want to know that you have you know, good academic record as well. But what it is important, I would say, is, for example, if you are doing postgraduate studies, you know, if you're doing more research at a university, obviously then the rankings would matter, because, like, for example, the QS rankings, they are based quite a lot on research output. So I think that is a reflection of research in many ways, and then often the student-based feedback, that's kind of like an overall student perception, student feedback, and that would be, I would say, probably even more relevant to the undergraduate level students.
That sounds great. Daniel, can you add something to this?
I mean, I'd echo what Marco just said. I think that he's hit most of the key points. Obviously, I could see where subject-specific rankings can be particularly important. I think Marco hit on that with his, in particular, related to postgrad, so masters or PhD type studies. but it can also be useful at the undergraduate level. And in some ways it can be, especially if students are looking longer term to be working in Australia. So if they want to stay on after a degree and seek some experience, the subject rankings can be useful as a guide to helping decide where you might like to study. But then I think, as Marco pointed out, it's entirely up to the individual to actually actively pursue the opportunities that are there to make them a more employable graduate. I mean, I think every university is getting better and better at providing those skills, but it's up to the individual to take advantage of those opportunities to put themselves in the best possible position to be a successful graduate.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Well, I would possibly add to this that rankings is in fact a guide, not a manual to use whenever you choose a university. And it always comes to the point that you should probably have fun, have one of the best experiences of your life while you're doing it, instead of just focusing on the rankings and the university and the rest of the things. So yeah, well, based on employability, we've got another question. Do you guys have any famous alumni that you could talk about, or any famous inventions that you've helped or made contribution to? Daniel.
Sure, I just opened up another screen on my computer, so that was poor timing. So much like ECU, QUT is a relatively youngest university by Australian standards, so not a number of significant or world famous alumni, although just recently we did have one of our academics, Professor James Dale, who's had a breakthrough on banana research of all things. So there's been a long-standing battle with Panama disease in bananas, which has made them particularly challenging. And Western Australia and Queensland are well known for growing their bananas, so it becomes a very popular source of information for the university. But Professor Dale has actually just created a breakthrough there, where he's actually been able to modify and grow a banana that is immune to this particular disease. And that's actually generated some funding from the United States, from a food company there, who are keen to actually progress this research into actual live cultivation of bananas with this particular strain. And what they are hopeful of that doing going forward is being able to break through some of the challenges of growing bananas in foreign countries, outside of Australia, in particular in the US. And I think they're mainly targeting Africa as a destination for that particular breakthrough. So perhaps not super famous. It would be nice to be able to say we had an Albert Einstein or someone like that, but Professor Dale is certainly topical just at the moment for QUT.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. Marco, do you have anything to say about ECU?
Yeah, look, I'm very, very similar to Daniel. I mean, same thing. Like every student, basically, you know, they make an impact in whatever field they enter, but not everyone of them we would see in CNN or appear in our Instagram feed. We have also, you know, in terms of research, you know, for example, melanoma, the skin cancer. So there's been a lot of skin cancer research at ECU. Alzheimer's research, for example, is another one. So we're very big on the medical and health science side. So they are famous globally in that field, but you know, we just, unless you are interested in that particular area, you wouldn't be aware. But we have some. Interestingly, one part of ECU is WAPA, which means Western Australian Academy of Performing Arts. So that's basically an academy for acting, music, theatre, and so forth. It's a massive part of the Perth cultural scene as well. So we produce a lot of musicals here in Perth, for example. So Hugh Jackman studied and graduated from WAPA. So obviously he is the star alumni of ECU. And then we have, you know, if you've watched, for example, Stranger Things on Netflix. So Billy from Stranger Things is one of ECU alumni. So sort of in the world of entertainment, we have a fair bit of stars, and they keep popping up on Netflix every now and then.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So maybe if students have that artistic passion, they should possibly consider ECU for their studies, judging from how many creatives that you have.
Yeah, and what's really cool about that the WAPA, the Performing Academy, is that even if you don't study acting or dance or music, it is such a part of campus. Like we've got bands playing outside, or we've got actors to act, film production teams, filming on campus and stuff. So you can actually see them a lot, even if you study something else. So yeah, that's something nice. Adds sort of nice spice to the campus life.
That's great. That's great. All right, and I see that we're getting quite a fair share of questions in the chat box at the moment, and in the Q&A section, and one of them are pretty good ones as well, and pretty general that we can actually address right now. So the first question that we have is about the cost of study at your universities, specifically at the undergraduate and postgraduate level. And do you guys actually offer any scholarships or financial aid to students, especially during these times? Daniel?
Sure. So I guess QUT has a range of price points across the undergraduate and postgraduate sort of range. So I think anywhere from 22,000 Australian per year, anywhere up to 32,000 Australian per year would be a reasonable sort of price range. From a scholarship standpoint, QUT does offer an international merit scholarship, which is available to any and all applicants. One of the key things that the assessors are looking for is good academic background. It's not the sole method of assessment. They're also looking at extracurricular activities, what people are doing outside of the university that might add, I guess, greater value to the QUT environment when they arrive. So if they're doing things or they have external experiences at home that they would like to bring to QUT, that might add a great deal of value to their application for a merit scholarship. So I might leave it at that and pass it over to Marco.
Sure.
Yeah. Sure. Thanks, Daniel. Yeah, it really depends on what you want to study. I mean, I'd recommend always to go at the universities of your interest and have a look on the websites. Prices are very readily available. Yeah, it's hard to say what would be the average. I'd say for undergraduate at ECU, you'd be looking at about 32,000 Australian a year. We do have Russia is part of our undergraduate scholarships, which is 20% reduction. So that would reduce that quite nicely. I actually just had a look that maybe in Russian rubles, you'd be looking at around 700,000 rubles per semester as a guide. And then we also have quite many students who are currently studying with us online, and it's not only with ECU. Australian universities do offer the online opportunity, so we do have a little bit a higher scholarship there for students who commence their studies online while the borders are closed. And then we have things like accommodation support as well for students who want to study on campus for their first semester.
That sounds great. It's good that you've mentioned online studies because, a lot of students that we have who are considering their studies in Australia, they keep on asking the question when the borders are going to open, and obviously by now we realize that nobody knows the answer, even the people who actually make decisions about opening borders. But it's actually a very good opportunity for them to use all of the scholarships that are currently available available to them because of studying online. It really it does reduce the cost of their studies. It also kind of negates the cost of living because they're staying in a home country for the time being. But it also is very good for them in terms of getting an actual degree and also everything that they can possibly get upon completion of that degree, because they can now, once they complete their studies, there's a chance they can apply for a graduate visa if they fall into the requirements to get it. And
can I also say,
yeah.
well, can I say, Vitaly, one thing in relation to that, and you know, this may come up later, and Daniel might chime in on this as well. But the fact is that, like you said, Australian borders are currently closed. We do sometimes pull our hair. You know, we really are. You know, Daniel and I, we both work in the international offices, and we just can't wait to welcome more international students on campus. But at the end of the day, right now, the border closure is, in a way, is a good thing. And I don't want anyone to see this the wrong way. But you know, countries that have open borders, like, you know, UK, you know, you can go and study in the UK, but you're not gonna get that study experience. You know, there are a lot of restrictions. You know, you might actually end up being in country, but being in lockdown, studying remotely online anyway. So I think that's one thing that is so important to always consider, that yes, there are globally options, but what is your actual student experience going to be right now in the next few months, or within the next within this year? So that's something that I encourage everyone to think. And another thing about the online studies, moving to a new country, and you know, once you come to Australia, it can be quite an overwhelming experience. It can be pretty full on, you know, new time zone, unless you come from Vladivostok, and new culture, new language, all that. And then on top of that, you have to get your head around the university systems and the university structure. By starting online, you already are part of the university. You've done that already. So that's a massive chunk of your culture shock and headache taken off once you've started online.
That's a great point. Daniel, would you like to add something to this as well?
Yeah, I think Marco has hit the nail on the head with the use of online study. I think it can really help smooth that transition, which is enormously challenging. I mean, there's all of the challenges of just moving to a new city, let alone trying to start a new life and actually have your head focused on what you've actually moved there to do. It's just hugely challenging. And certainly experience from, I guess, this time last year when the lockdown first happened in Australia, and there were international students here, and some who chose to remain. I mean, there's certainly anecdotal evidence that talks about the real challenges that those students found living and studying in Australia, but not having the experience that they had planned to, just as Marco had pointed out. And it was enormously frustrating for everybody involved, because there was very little that anyone could do because everywhere was locked down. So it wasn't like you could just go and see your lecturer or your friends at the university. It was, no, you can't do it. So yeah, I think Marco's right there to utilize the online study. We realize it's not the answer to what everyone wants at the moment, but it's a great way to get yourself started, get yourself used to the idea of study at a different university. And then when the borders open, we are more than ready to welcome you back. It is, you will not meet someone in a university setting right now that doesn't want to have students, international students in particular, back on campus. It's a noticeable difference.
And one way that you could think of the online study, you know, if you compare online study versus on-campus study. So, you know, think of you going to cinema, to the movies, and you know, you go with friends. You've got that social aspect. You share popcorn. That's kind of like the on-campus experience. You know, cinema almost looks like a lecture theater as well. But studying online, it's almost kind of like Netflix. You put it on when you want. If you need to pause it, you pause it. If you need to watch something again, you watch something again. So the university gives you the content, the university gives you the support, but you are in charge. You decide when you press play. And I think that's a wonderful thing of online study. So I can see the benefit, and I totally understand that that's not a replacement of the real on campus experience. But you know, the silver lining could be that, you know, by starting online, you actually get both experiences, and I don't think it's a bad thing.
Yeah. Well, it's a very good analogy that you've driven with Netflix and the cinema. It's you do get the benefits in either way, and yeah, definitely. I would say that once we get back to traveling and we get to well, a bit of normalcy that we used to experience before this lockdown, I would say that universities will probably implement something of a blended mode where students would have the ability to have this experience with their friends, like in the cinema, sharing the popcorn, but also have the conveniency of listening to lectures anytime they want, at any point they want. Now, I could also say it from my own experience because, well, we all did our studies on campus, and right now I'm doing my studies online as well. And all I wish right now is just that I could do it full time instead of just somewhere in between life happening. But yeah, I never thought that the experience of doing studies online could be this beneficial, this convenient, and this is what we hear from our students as well. They at first we see that there's a lot of prejudice towards studying online, but once they do start their studies, we see that, hey, well, this is actually a very good experience. I get to do this, this, and that, but on top of that, I can actually do my studies as well, and I save money. I don't have to travel a lot. There's no commute, and you still have the chance to create those connections with other students. And this is just perfect. This is just great. This is just great.
I think you're absolutely right there. And there's the opportunity, I guess, longer term, graduate employment. There's definitely going to be industries where you're not going to be showing up to an office every day, and having the ability to be able to say, yes, look, okay, yeah, it was a pandemic and I had to study online, but at least you've got those skills. Whereas there's going to be a generation of students who just probably won't have those skills. Everyone for the last 3 or 4 years who hasn't had that experience isn't going to be able to talk as authoritatively about that. So definite advantages.
Yeah.
And I think, like, we are right now on Zoom. When did we first heard of Zoom? Now we use Zoom every day.
Yeah.
I think what's going to change when COVID is over is, for example, for international business travel. I think companies will think long and hard. Okay, do we need to fly our people to city X for that meeting or for that conference? Could we do it virtually? So yeah, the world is getting more digital. Yeah, and I think it's good to have that somehow reflected in your studies as well, that the online, the digital element.
That's right. And by becoming more digital, I would say it also gets a little bit more connected, because previously you wouldn't be able to travel to any place you want, but now you could have, like, we could sit in Moscow and in Brisbane and Perth and have a discussion like this. And this is great. Yeah. Anywho, let's get back to a more general questions that that we have from our students, and this is mainly about the entry requirements for the courses. Can we start with English language requirements for your courses, guys, for both undergraduate and postgraduate studies? Marco, what do you have to say about that?
I won't go into exceptions, because there are always as with universities, there are exceptions. Rule of thumb is that undergraduate is IELTS 6, postgraduate 6.5. If you've done 11 years in Russia, we do have on-campus pathway college, where you can do like a pathway diploma. You still complete your undergraduate in 3 years, but the entry requirements are slightly lower for the pathway college.
Oh, that's great. So it is actually possible as we have 11 years of high school education in Russia, and it's different to Australian system of secondary education, which is 12 years. So with this preparation course, they can actually get into their undergraduate studies directly, from what I can see. Yeah.
They
Is that
could,
right?
yeah, but yeah, well, if they've done 11 years, then they would do like
Mhm.
2 stages of the diploma.
Mhm.
And the first stage of the diploma is basically a replacement of
Mhm.
year 12.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Daniel, what about QUT? Is it the same or is it slightly different?
Slightly different. So once again, general rule of thumb, the admission requirement is an IELTS of 6.5 at the undergraduate and the postgraduate level. There are higher requirements for other discipline areas, primarily the healthcare areas. They do have a higher requirement, but that's the rule of thumb. And yeah, a very similar sort of arrangement as to what Marco had said regarding the diploma program. Yeah.
So it's I would say that it's pretty attainable for students from Russia and Ukraine, because most of the students who actually have completed their studies in secondary schools or universities in Russia, they would probably have an English level of about 6.5 in IELTS. Some of them would be even better, because as you guys know, we operate a test center and we see many students taking those exams, and sometimes we get surprised when students come to us and they have like an 8.5 in everything, and it's just like, wow, this is amazing.
That's better English than some of us here in Australia.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. So yeah, that sounds great. So yeah, I'd like to summarize. You guys have both undergraduate and postgraduate qualifications that are available to international students. You could get into those qualifications by doing an IELTS exam, and all you have to do is get a 6.5, approximately an average 6.5 score to get into those degrees. And also, if you have completed your studies in Russia at the secondary level, it is possible to get into undergraduate studies through specific courses that can prepare you for those particular courses in Australia. Would you like to add anything to that, or does that summarize everything correctly?
Yeah, and then now the admissions teams, we would look at whatever the Russian certificate attestat is called. So we would just look at that, and yeah, we do recognize that as well.
That's awesome. And we actually got a very good question right now from Daria. She says that do you guys accept IB diplomas?
For English?
Yeah. To get into undergraduate studies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Perfect. So yeah, it is possible.
Yep.
Okay. Perfect. What else? Well, we always get a lot of questions from students about employment opportunities upon completion of their studies, specifically in Australia. What do you have to say about what type of experience students have once they complete their studies in Australia, what they could possibly consider in terms of employment opportunities upon completion of their studies? Marco?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, if I may also already start about employment opportunities while you study, because I think that's quite an important thing about Australia. In Australia, your student visa is also your work permit. So as an international student, no matter where you're from, you have the right to work 20 hours per week and full-time during your breaks. One thing to keep in mind, though, that working while you are studying, you often do student kind of jobs, which is working in cafes and hotels and events. So that might not be directly linked to what you are studying. So that's a really, really good thing to keep in mind about Australia. Australia also has what is called the postgraduate work right. So once you graduate in Australia, depending what you've studied and depending where you live, where you've done your studies, you've got X number of years that you can actually stay and work in Australia. So that's a fantastic way of graduating here and then actually getting those early career skills here in Australia as well. And I'm sure Daniel would say that QUT has the same thing, career support. So we support students with their career during the studies, and also we help them building their profile, and we help them with their employability as well. So help with employment while they study, and help with employability, which means it's more about you and how you stand in the marketplace. So we put students in the right place as best as we can.
That's perfect. Daniel, do you have anything to add to this?
Yeah, I'd love to. So I guess one of the things that QUT really prides itself on is it is a university for the real world. So much like Marco has talked about, the opportunities for experience throughout your degree, QUT basically prides itself on the fact that almost every single student who completes a QUT degree will have had some real world practical experience as part of that degree, irrespective of whether it's in a nursing or education, engineering, business. There will be some level of engagement with the sector that you are hoping to work in as a student. And that's absolutely invaluable. It just helps, it builds those connections, it gets you used to the Australian workforce, gives you an understanding of what the expectations are of an employee, so that when you are graduating and looking for employment, you're not overwhelmed or underprepared for those expectations. You feel comfortable. And that typically is where most first year graduates really find that a challenge. It's the uncertainty around what the professional world requires of them. Because I imagine as a student, you're used to waiting for a lecturer to say, okay, here's your notes, here's a piece of assessment, this is what you're going to do. Whereas the real world doesn't really always work that way. So that's one of the things that QUT really prides itself on, is providing students with those types of opportunities.
That's true. I can say this also because I used to live in Brisbane. QUT is fantastic in that. I'd say both QUT and ECU, I mean, we both stand out. Australia has around 40 universities, and these two universities, they really stand out for that real life support. And I think one thing to add to what Daniel was saying about the work integrated learning is that we don't only send students to the industry, we actually bring the industry on campus as well. So a lot of the technology that you see on campus is actually developed together with the industry. So for example, in our business school, we might have a trading room that is done by Bloomberg, the news agency. And we have things like guest lectures and industry workshops and things like that. And that's a very, very unique thing in Australian universities, and some universities in Australia like QUT and ECU do it even better than the average.
That's perfect, and well, it transitions to one of the most frequently asked questions that we get from students is whether universities place students into jobs, and yeah, it's a perfect explanation of everything. That you could have some institutions that place students into jobs, but you guys do something better. You teach students to get those jobs, but by the time they're done with their degrees at your universities, they don't need anyone to place them into jobs, because they've got all the skills they need to get into those jobs themselves. And that is so much better, because like sometimes you would have you get lucky, you get placed into a job, but what do you do next once you're done with that job if you don't have those skills? So yeah, I would say that having the skills to get into a job, being able to communicate well within your peers, and being able to look for job opportunities is so much better than just having an opportunity to work. And obviously, Australia gives the graduates that as well, with the graduate visa and work rights during their studies. So all the students can use those opportunities, and this is simply great. And this is possibly one of the one of the key points why students choose Australia, because some other countries don't actually offer students to work during their studies, so they're not able to get that work experience, or they are currently not offering work opportunities upon completion of their studies, which is also not that great. But Australia offers both, so that's simply perfect. Yeah. And we've actually got another question about online studies, and it's a kind of a very relevant one. How do you think is it comfortable to study online, judging that we have such a huge time difference between cities? Because Brisbane is located pretty far away from Moscow, and it's 8 hours difference right now between us. But Australia and Russia are similar in a way that we are big countries, and we've also got Ukraine, and that is a massive country in Europe. So yeah, the time difference could play a big role.
I would go back to that Netflix comparison that you know you are in charge of when you want to do what with online study. So much so that with online study, the whole notion of timetabling, it's not necessarily even that relevant. Yes, there are some timed activities, but they are more sort of like engagement and support activities. You know, for example, at ECU, we have what we call International Cafe. It's a fantastic, we have it on campus, but now we have the virtual version as well. It's amazing. There's some great stuff that we do, like quiz competitions and stuff in that cafe. But and we do try to kind of timetable those to the most optimal hour, which is sort of around, I'd say, in Moscow time, it would be around 9:30 to 10 a.m. and then later in most other parts of Russia. But then in terms of the lectures and stuff, you know, once they are there in your Blackboard, which is your online platform for studying, you decide when you want to press play on that lecture. You decide when you want to rewind and hear something again. So yeah, I don't think time zone really matters.
Yeah, look, I once again I agree with Marco entirely. I think it's an absolutely key point that online study allows you as a student to choose when you want to study. And Marco's point around there are some limited times of engagement that are required, but beyond that, you can, if you're a late night studier, if you're an early morning studier, if you're an afternoon studier, the online study is almost perfect for you as an individual to build the best you for your course, because there's no requirement of, oh, I have to get up and I have to get to my lecture at 8 a.m. in the morning, which means I have to be on the train at 6:30 in the morning, and that means I have to get up at 5:30. I mean, all of that sort of stuff just stops, and it makes it so much easier for you as an individual to tailor your degree to your specific needs. I actually studied online. I did my master's here in Australia online. So I never actually attended a lecture in person, and it was fantastic for me. Like, I just found, well, once I got into I understood how I worked best and how I studied best, I was able to set myself up. And yeah, the Netflix analogy is perfect. I was pausing, I was coming back, I was rewinding, I was making sure that I had everything that I needed to succeed, and I had the tools to be able to do that. So online study can really be an absolutely fantastic option.
And you didn't do it, Daniel, because of COVID.
No, I did not. No,
exactly.
We
didn't know of COVID. Yeah.
No, I chose to do that, and it was fantastic. It worked out really, really well for me.
That's awesome. And just as you said this, I remembered about the technique that I've learned a couple of years ago. It's called the Pomodoro technique. When you study for 30 minutes and then you take a short break, and then you study for another 30 minutes and by doing this, you will keep your focus up all of the times, and you will actually absorb way more information. But if you're going to a lecture physically, you can't press pause on that lecture and just take a 5 minutes break. Yeah. So yeah, it's very convenient that you can do that online. For sure.
I might also add one more thing about online. We do sometimes at ECU, we do get questions from students who are looking to start online. They ask that, what happens to their postgraduate work right eligibility? Can they still, even if they lose a semester or whatever the time is, they lose, that they can't be in country? That's fine. So Australian government has confirmed that as long as you have a student visa, you can start your studies online, and that still counts towards your eligibility. So that's something good to keep in mind as well. So you won't be negatively impacted in that sense.
That sounds great. That sounds great. And I will start going to the questions that we have in the chat. And one of the questions that we have: are there any age restrictions at your universities, both the upper and lower age restrictions? Marco?
Definitely not upper. We had last year we had, can't remember how old was she, like 89 or something.
Oh, really?
We had a very yes,
Wow.
she hit the news here in Perth. So yeah, never too old to study. For the lower 18, we would recommend for a variety of reasons, welfare and things like that. There are in the pathway college, if you were younger, there would be some exceptions, but as a rule of thumb, again, I'd say 18.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah, QUT would have almost exactly the same position as ECU around that. So I think Marco's spoken fairly clearly on that.
Yeah, that sounds great. And but based from our experience, I could also say that Russian students are going to Australia at pretty much any age. And since we also help students to with their studies in other countries, I would say that Australia is one of the most flexible countries in terms of age. Whenever we have students for Canada, for example, some of them can't really travel to Canada because they're a little bit too old for their studies in there. Not because the universities don't accept them, but because of the visa regulations. So it gets a little bit trickier. But judging from our experience with handling visa applications, yeah, we had a student who was 42 years old, and she just went into just a simple master's coursework course, and she did great. Yeah, well. She traveled together with her family and the kids. They had a blast. Yeah.
Great.
We do actually see a fair bit from, seems to be quite typical from Europe, families coming. So, for postgraduate studies, when you are a student visa holder, you can bring the family as dependents. And that's another sort of great thing that, you don't need to even consider leaving family behind. And often those are sort of late 30s, early 40s kind of range. So people often ask that, what's the average age, and would I fit in because I am this old? I really, and I'm sure Daniel, you'd agree, in the university world, you don't even see students as being aged something. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of I think you'd be fine at whatever age you are.
Yeah, look, I would agree. I think the university environment is welcoming to anyone and everyone. I mean, you would see, you walk around on the campuses and you see the range of multicultural faces and backgrounds that are there, and age just becomes it's just another part of the university experience. It has little or nothing to do with what you were studying or why you were there. It's simply you're all university students, and I think that's a fantastic piece of perspective to have.
Exactly. I mean, if you've done, like, I don't know, if you've been to Brighton or Malta or wherever you go for English language courses, I think that's where you notice the age more, because English language courses are more, they are more about the fun element as well. And I'm not saying universities are not fun, but that's where you sort of, if you go there at the age of 40, you'd probably notice in a language school that, oh, okay, I'm a little bit an outsider here, but definitely not at a university.
That's for sure. That's for sure. Perfect. And let's get back to more specific questions that we have about the courses, particular courses that you might offer to students. We've already mentioned, you guys already mentioned that you offer courses in computer science and IT. Azim, who was asking about programming, is asking about computer security studies that the ECU offers. Can you just elaborate on that, Marco? What kind of courses that you offer? Is it at an undergraduate or postgraduate level? And what are the key benefits of doing those courses at the ECU?
Yeah, good question. Well, at ECU, we haven't introduced cybersecurity recently because it's become globally such a huge thing. We've been doing that since 2001.
Wow.
So we've got a long experience in that. What would be really good to keep in mind is really that, like I said, that we are the Australian Cybersecurity Research Centre. We've got the Operations Centres here, so it's like a cyber activity hub in so many ways, not only academically. We also have on-campus startup called Sapien. So a lot of the students who study cyber, they actually go and work in our startup company, or they go to one of our industry partners. So really, that's cyber at ECU is that prime example of kind of like Daniel was talking about the cube that QUT has, that you can touch things, that that ultimate technologically advanced experience that you can get at an Australian university. At cyber at ECU, you really can get that. We've just updated the facilities last year, so we opened 3 more floors of cybersecurity because it's so much growing. So yeah, but to answer, I mean, we do offer undergraduate, postgraduate. You can combine that with business studies. You can do cyber as one of the MBA specializations. So it's a very visible part of ECU, and there are a lot of opportunities there.
So it's possible not to only just study cybersecurity. You can actually do it in line with your business studies, for example.
Yes.
Oh,
yeah. You can either do it as a double degree as undergrad, or then you can do it as one of the MBA specializations.
That's awesome.
Yeah. 2 of our, I'd say one more interesting thing. Interpol has 6 what are called like cybersecurity experts globally around the world. 2 of them work at ECU.
Wow.
So that just kind of shows how big cyber is at ECU.
That's perfect. And yeah, it's a great thing to consider if you're looking into cyber, for sure. So I guess hopefully Azim got an answer to his question. Daniel, we've got another question from Daria, and she's asking whether you guys offer sustainability and urban planning courses at QUT.
We do. So QUT has I guess 2 different, degrees at the undergraduate level that Daria could have a look at. We have an urban planning bachelor's degree, but we also have a landscape architecture degree. So obviously there's a little bit of a difference between the 2. I guess it really just depends on what's, the focus that she would like to have within that degree. Obviously urban planning is going to be a little bit more focused on the planning of the buildings, whereas the landscape architecture is going to be more around the actual architecture and how it fits into the landscape itself. So very slight differences, but there are going to be, the way the courses are going to be structured are going to be slightly different and give emphasis in one direction or the other. And obviously, if Daria was interested in sort of going down the architecture pathway, then the landscape architecture would probably be a better fit if she wanted to work as an architect longer term. That would be a better degree path to follow than the urban planning, which would be a simple three-year degree, come out with a qualification, but not necessarily have the ability to matriculate into an architecture style program.
Makes sense. And do you offer those courses at the postgraduate level, or is it just the undergrad?
they're both undergraduate level courses. Once you get to the postgraduate level, it starts getting a little bit more specific, and that's where we start seeing the transition into our architecture degree. So it's a little bit, it's effectively at the bachelor level, we're trying to provide, I guess, as wide a range and base of knowledge as we possibly can. And then it's a question of, okay, what does a student want to do at that next level? Can we find some way to facilitate that?
Makes sense. So, we actually had a couple of students who had completed their studies in Russia, architectural studies in Russia, and they've actually went into QUT to do their masters in architecture, and yeah, from what I know, they did pretty well, and yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, great.
All right, and we've got a very interesting question. I haven't had this before. Do you guys have courses in brewing and distilling? By any chance?
I saw that question before. No, I don't. But if whoever asked that question, if you find one, I'm happy to come and test the results of their work. We don't. We used to have actually on campus brewery, but you couldn't study it. But we don't have it anymore.
Okay. No, unfortunately, QUT doesn't have one either. But I agree. I'm more than welcome. I'm more than willing to try and to travel wherever I need to go. Australia is well known for its winemaking, so there's probably a stronger. There might be some crossover there. Certainly, Brisbane has a large number of micro breweries that are popping up now. As to where those people are getting their skills, I have no idea. But yeah, certainly the winemaking is very popular. So that might be there might be some crossover there that could be looked at.
That's for sure. Yeah. Well, once Vyacheslav is gonna find this course, I'm sure we can gather in the bar somewhere in a few years and try out.
Do you know? I love that question because we do often get sort of very niche kind of questions, and that would be at the top of them, like really unique area. But I think that's something that will stay popular in years to come.
For sure. But yeah, I would just like to add to Vyacheslav, if you could contact us, we could possibly sit around with you and see what can Australia possibly offer to you, because as we've mentioned already, it's very specific, it's very niche, but it's obviously possible to find something in Australia. Just needs some exploring and research to do. All right, and another question that we have about, do you guys offer biochemistry and bioengineering at ECU and QUT?
ECU doesn't, unfortunately, either.
Okay, what about QUT?
QUT does. I'm just going to dive in and have a quick look. So within our Bachelor of Engineering, there are a number of different majors, minors that you can specialize in effectively. I certainly know that I'm just trying to find it now. Sorry, as I talk, which is confusing my brain. I can't do two things at once.
That's all right.
No. That's fine. But there's certainly an opportunity there. I can't track down the information off the top of as I talk. So. Yes, effectively, yes, we can. I'm happy to provide that information after the session has ended today, but we would certainly have something that may be of interest to the student who's submitted that inquiry.
Sure. And I would like to point this out to everyone listening to us, since it's mostly a chat, it's not always possible to get into details into specific courses, but this is why we are here. Once we're done with our presentation or with our webinar, you can always contact us and just say what courses are you considering. We can sit around, talk about them, and possibly find the right course or a range of courses for you that will definitely suit your needs and what you're looking for. And obviously you will be able to see through the course curriculum, see how these courses are structured, and based on what I know and what I always see on the QT and ECU websites, they're very comprehensive. They have a lot of details about what course consists of, and yeah, especially if you compare it to Russian universities. Russian universities don't typically have this many details about what students can actually study. And I'm actually having a flashback to my experience that when I went into the university, I didn't know what I was going to study at a specific degree, and it's completely different to Australia. You could actually see exactly what you're going to do once you start rolling.
One thing I'd like to add about that is, you know, I'm a non-native speaker myself. So when I moved to Australia, and the university terminology sometimes was a little bit confusing. So, for example, unit. So we always talk about units, and I'm like, what the hell is a unit? I don't understand. Because unit also we call unit an apartment here in Australia. So unit is basically Aussie lingo for subject. So if you go to university's website, you can then actually go to your whatever is the course, the main degree that you want to do, and then you can actually see a list of those units that are part of that, and they often explain. Just the names of those units explain so much that what those courses will offer. But then often, like for example at ECU, you just need to click on that unit, and then you can access the unit handbook, and that has very detailed. That's got the whole unit explained and laid out. So you can actually, if you are interested, you can spend hours looking for information for any particular program.
That's perfect. I think you just did a crash course on on how to use the website and the handbook. That's great. Thank you, Marco. All right. And from what I can see, that we've pretty much answered most of the questions that we had from our audience. Great questions, guys, and very, very good ones. And I would like to possibly end this presentation, because we are already running out of time, with a bit of a fun one. What do you think? Well, since you guys live in Perth and Brisbane, what do you think what are the things that are very attractive in your cities that you possibly could recommend to our students? Daniel, what do you think about Brisbane?
Sure. 9 months of the year, this is the greatest city in the world to live in. I don't tell a lie. I'm originally from Perth. I spent the last 9 years in Adelaide. So I've had different experiences in 3 different cities here in Australia. And this is by far and away the best environment that I've found to live in. Very outdoors based, very focused environment. So everyone is up early, everyone is always exercising. And the lifestyle of the city really reflects that. So everything is outdoors. So no matter the time of year, you will always find people outdoors, whether that's in the gardens next to our campus, on the river, at the cafes overlooking the river, at the beach, hiking in the mountains, everything. Brisbane is a city to explore and to be explored by people. It's truly wonderful from that perspective. So if students are looking for an experience in Australia that allows them to do lots of things that they perhaps wouldn't have the opportunity to do at home, I think Brisbane would be an excellent choice from that perspective.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, well, so sounds like a great city to live in and to study as well. Yeah. Marco, what do you have to say about Perth?
Very, very similar in a sense to what Daniel was saying. I'm originally from Finland, from the Arctic Circle, you know, where it's really, I grew up kind of like Siberia kind of weather. So you can imagine I'm quite happy in Australia. So in Perth, what I actually did, it's very interesting. I did the opposite of Daniel. So I was in Brisbane first, and then I've moved to Perth. Absolutely love both places. I don't think you could go wrong with either of these two amazing cities. What I really like about Perth is this is a city where I've really gotten into cycling, and again that goes to the same outdoorsy lifestyle that Daniel was talking about in Brisbane, and Perth has the same. I recommend everyone coming to Perth, or indeed Brisbane is good for cycling as well, to get a bicycle, because you can get around so easily. You know, the cycling tracks are among the best in the world here. They are like mini highways. They have signposts and lanes and stuff yet. And for example, where I live here in Perth, I live pretty much in the city. I can cycle to the beach in 50 minutes if I'm fast enough. So that's one attraction here in Perth. The white sand beaches, they are basically all along the Western Australian coastline, and they are right here in Perth as well. So famous for the sort of city beaches, I would even call. Also incredible road trips from here. So, you know, during your semester breaks, you can go down to Margaret River, which is famous wine area, but amazing beaches as well, or go up north, and you can do diving and whatnot there. Or even further away, like Perth is a great bay. I mean, you can keep yourself busy and very happy in Perth, but you know, if you want to go further away, Bali is 3 hours away. That was before COVID. That's where I had my haircuts. So it's very handy to go there. Or even the rest of Southeast Asia is sort of like 5-6 hours away. So that's what I like about Perth, is that, you know, once the travel is possible again, you can very easily go overseas from here, which sometimes from Australia it feels like everything is so far, but Perth is in kind of that handy corner of Australia for Southeast Asia.
That's perfect. That's perfect. When you were saying about the bicycle tracks, kind of reminded me of Amsterdam, but with good weather.
Amsterdam with good weather, absolutely. That is very, very true. Yeah.
That's perfect. Anywho, guys, I think we going to the end, and it looks like we've answered most of the questions that all our participants had. I'd like to end on this, and I'd like to thank you for joining us. And I know that it's already later in the day for you guys, especially for you, Daniel. But yeah, it's great to have you with us. It's really good that you've decided to share this information, and we are always up for sharing this information with all our students, because we think the more they know about studying in the countries that they're considering, the better experience they will have in those countries. So, yep. Thank you once again, and yeah, we'll keep in touch and see each other later.
Thanks very much.
Cheers.